Give us 1 minute while it connects. All right, thank you everyone for watching. This is Sergio Marrero, and we're here with another episode of RBL1 Live. We have a great guest tonight, Dr. Shante Williams, who is a activist, keynote speaker, and also founder of Black Pearl Global Investments. So excited to have you tonight. Thank you for joining us, Shante.
Thank you for having me.
To share a little bit about of course, to share a little bit about Shantae's background. She's a graduate of Winston-Salem State University, Queen's University of Charlotte, and the Ohio State University, where she got her PhD, has a background in investing, working at several places, RW Capital Partners, Equilibrium Impact Partners, and most recently as CEO of Black Pearl Global Investments. So if you can kick it off and share with the audience a little bit about Black Pearl Global Investments.
Yeah, so Black Pearl Global Investments is my second baby, I'll call it. It's my second entrepreneurial venture, but what we do is we invest in healthcare companies around the world. We like to say we invest in companies that will increase access to care, drive down costs, and improve outcomes. And we like to do that in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. And we look for companies that are going to be really innovative, that can achieve one or all three of those goals for us. And they are companies that can create jobs. We help build them where they are to become job creators. And then we help them get venture backable. And then they kind of go all over and expand into other territories, including the United States. We also deploy that model here in urban and rural markets in the United States. As you know, we still have some healthcare inequities, and we're always looking to make sure that we are increasing access and driving down the cost of healthcare, even here in the US. From a fund size, we're a small fund. We're a $25 million fund. But our check size, our sweet spot, somewhere between 100,000 and 250,000. And we have really moved away from any particular sector in healthcare. But what we really look for, checking those three boxes: are you making healthcare more accessible to more folks? I have some pet areas that I love, maternal health. I like companies that are increasing access and solving health disparities, especially for people of color and for women. And Black Pearl is located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our second office actually is in Kingston, Jamaica, and we will be opening a third office at the first half of 2022 in Ghana in Africa. So we're moving, we're growing, and it's a really exciting time to be in healthcare investing.
Excellent. And what type of, you're writing 100 to 250K checks. Any other particular attributes you're looking for in a healthcare startup or in a founder who's coming to you guys?
Yeah, so we of course love working with first-time founders or folks that don't have this. This is not their second or third or fourth startup, but we like coachable founders. We like people who really share our mission and our passion. As far as their backgrounds, we like strong teams. We invest in people and we look to build long-term relationships. So for us, it's really about the feel of the team, the mission, what they're driven to do. And we will invest. We have worked with companies and invested in them at idea stage all the way up to bridge rounds, even into Series A. So for us, the stage doesn't matter. It's really that mission and how you're able to create impact.
Excellent. Would love if you can share with the audience a little bit more about your journey of how you ended up starting Black Pearl Global Investments and being based out of Charlotte, North Carolina.
So Charlotte is home. I'm 704, born and bred, which is, if you live in Charlotte, that's kind of a rare thing. Everybody's from somewhere else now. But my journey's really atypical. I started off in the clinic as a scientist and leaving science in the clinic and really thinking about how do we get all of those cool innovations into the market. And from there, I started figuring out what I was really good at. I went into management consulting and investment banking, and I actually took my first job without taking a business class, which I'm pretty sure my firm wouldn't tell a lot of people because I ended up running financial modeling, and I really loved it. But Black Pearl really came to fruition when I met my two other partners here in Charlotte. One is a critical care pulmonologist who's worked in healthcare for 30 plus years. The other is a tech executive who has worked through hospital systems. And we really started thinking about all of the various new companies and technologies that we had seen, plus all of the areas that we'd like to see improvement in. And we started thinking, hey, I think we can probably make some really big moves if we really focus on those technologies, those companies, those startups, those founders that are really going to make a difference. So we came together in 2018, actually, and we started kicking this idea around of an investment fund. And it was an interesting journey in the sense that there are not very many VCs here in the Southeast, very few in Charlotte. We are a city of bankers. And for us, it was really about saying, hey, let's make small investments. Our first investments were in the $25,000 range. And let's start working with founders. Let's start working with startups and seeing whether or not we can really move the needle for them using our network and our connections. And it started to really pay off. I'll say most people would, I think, laugh at my journey now because I didn't start off as someone that was going to be steeped in VC. I didn't know a lot about raising a fund. I had worked with people who raised funds. I had done M&A work, but I'd never actually worked in pure VC. And all of a sudden I became, I'll call it a pseudo expert in the area and really thinking about what the needs were for the Southeast region, people of color, and in healthcare, and how can we bridge those gaps. So Black Pearl was born, and we've been running ever since.
Yeah, and why healthcare?
That's what I do. That's my background, man. So my clinical background actually is in experimental therapeutics, which is in neuro-oncology. So that was a lot of words to say. I used to come up with novel treatments to stop brain tumors from spreading through the brain, which fantastic field. I love what I did, but I've always thought of myself as, I don't want to be grandiose and say a healer, but I knew that there's a lot of good that you can do in the world if you make people healthier. And so for me, everything that I do really runs through healthcare, even if I'm not in the clinic or at the bench side anymore. But healthcare is the right place to start. I think in the future, we'll probably expand out of healthcare because we know that there are so many things that kind of feed into us being healthy and us having a healthful life. So I think the future probably will drive me out of healthcare, but right now, healthcare is where my love and my passion is.
And how do you think about the portfolio? Many, and I would say a good number of healthcare VCs that I talk to, they either focus on biotech or they don't. And given biotech, the investment of biotech, it takes a long time to prove out, takes a lot of capital before there's even any revenue and a lot of regulatory hurdles. So how do you think about your portfolio in that respect, also given your background?
Well, I will say, given my background, I don't do any pharmaceutical investing. So a lot of that higher end oncology drug discovery stuff, I don't do at all. We don't invest in that. And frankly, we probably don't have enough money to really make a dent in companies that really are moving forward in that space. And for us, we're looking at companies that can make impact in 3 to 5 years. So not as long as biotech, but we want to see companies or innovations that can make impact in the short term and that can be easily piloted. One of the reasons I think a lot of companies get stalled is that regulatory hurdle, but also getting something into the hospital system or being tested on patients. It's quite a huge hurdle to clear. And I think for good reason. I mean, we're talking about people's health. So we like to work with companies that have innovations that can be tested iteratively and can work outside of that normal FDA regulatory process. So to date, all of our companies have been able to, learn the regulatory tracks for them. Some are 510K, but most of them are steering way clear of any clinical trials or phase work. And that's how we work with companies that can make impact, in the short term.
Excellent. And in terms of your journey in building a fund, can you share a little bit more of the mystery behind the build? There's a lot of aspiring emerging fund managers. So how did you raise that 25 million? Can you share some of the biggest challenges that you faced and how you overcame them?
Well, I have to say, disclaimer, we're still raising. We have not closed our fund. But I'll give the advice that the people that I talked to gave when I said, I'm going to start a fund. They said, don't do it. I was like, oh, no, that's the wrong answer, right? But I think the biggest challenge really is growing a network. You've got to know check writers. And if you're a first-time fund manager, you have to know them well. They have to be willing to take the risk on you. If I had it to do all over again, I would have spent that first year really just cultivating my network, getting to know way more people, getting to know more accredited investors, really building out who I'm going to ask for those checks from. So that's kind of thing number one. So if you don't have a really good network or your partners don't have good networks, it's going to be really hard to just cold call somebody and say, hey, can you write $1 million check for me? You don't know me, but I'm super smart. That doesn't work very well. I wish it worked better, but it really doesn't. And I think the other thing that I think a lot of first-time fund managers don't do is put your own capital at risk. When we started writing those small checks, the capital at risk was our own. So all of the partners did put up monies. And I won't say that, it wasn't millions of dollars, but it was enough for us to start making those investments and showing the people that we wanted to bring in as LPs that the GPs had some skin in the game. Which, that's not easy for everybody to do, but that was one of the things that really helped us kind of move forward. The other thing I'll say is I think a lot of people don't realize fund managers don't tend to make a lot of money right off the bat. That's the other kind of misconception. So I encourage anybody who wants to be a fund manager to recognize that you might not be collecting any of those management fees until you have, raised the entire fund. So you might want to have, you might actually want to have some other things or some other skills continuing to go, because being a full-time fund manager is quite difficult.
Excellent. No, thank you for the unique insight. And in terms of your basing in Charlotte, can you share some of the unique insight around the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Charlotte? Like why I would ask it two-sided and let you talk about both, but why Charlotte and why not Charlotte? And I'll let you dive in there.
Well, why Charlotte and why not Charlotte? So why Charlotte? Charlotte is an international city. It's got an airport. It's easily accessible to everywhere else. And because there are not a lot of VCs or people who do pure alternative investing or venture investing in the area, nobody's really servicing the startups here. Nobody's, able to, see pitches and, help them really build. This is my hometown. And so I want to see startups grow and thrive and go off and change the world. So that's why Charlotte. Why not Charlotte? there aren't a lot of VCs here. Like, you don't have a ton of support. You know, when we think about VC, traditionally, you're thinking West Coast, you might be thinking the Midwest and Chicago, you might be thinking New York. Not very many people are thinking Charlotte, North Carolina. So it's a gift and a curse. We have one of the younger entrepreneurial ecosystems. And so really building a pipeline that's Charlotte specific, of course, is pretty difficult. For now, I think in a few years, I think there's going to be more than enough pipeline to come through that's healthcare specific. But I will say I don't begrudge anybody who starts a fund and wants to be in a city where there are a lot of support partners. We kind of created our own tribe. We started working with angel investors, first-time check writers, a lot of banks who were kind of dabbling in the VC space, and universities who wanted to build more of a startup bridge. We started working with those folks, and that in and of itself enabled us to kind of create our own little VC bubble. But it's hard at times, especially when, if you're on the West Coast, everybody knows somebody probably that's in VC or raising money, or they have a friend, cousin, brother, uncle who's like, oh, I know a guy who raised $100 billion yesterday. It takes longer to raise here. And generally, a lot of your funders, at least the first time around, probably aren't going to be in the Southeast. They're probably going to be from other places. So lots of pros, lots of cons. For us, it's about striking the balance and making sure that, we leverage that airport and we get to every other place to make sure that we're actively raising all the time.
Excellent. And can you share a little bit of how you found your co-founders for Black Pearl Global Investment, or the community that invests with you initially?
Oh, it's actually one of those weird coincidental stories. I'll try to make it short. So I went to an HBCU, so I'm an alum of Winston-Salem State University, and I was giving a talk to the community about the need for us to put more capital into small businesses and startups. And one of the people in the audience happened to be an alum of Winston-Salem State, so he came to me and said, hey, I'd love to chat with you more. And turns out he was a pastor. And he goes, well, and this is the South. This is very characteristic of a Southern city. And he goes, you should come to my church and then we'll chat after that. And I'm thinking, is this a ploy to just get me to church? And I get there and he said, one of my parishioners has been talking about investing, and I think you guys would hit it off. And so after I came to church, I sat through the service, and then after church, he comes down and he introduces me to my partner, Dr. Carl Smart. And from there, I tell Carl he's tougher than any LP, because we met and then he completely went ghost on me for 15 months. And I thought he went ghost, but actually he was watching and kind of evaluating what I was doing, unbeknownst to me. And then he gives me a call and says, hey, I really do think we should do that venture thing. And so that, it was a chance meeting. And I don't know that we would have met if it hadn't been for that connector. And our third partner is someone that actually met at a networking event. He said something witty and I said something back very witty. And then he says, what do you do? And it was kind of off to the races. So I'm a very sociable person at times. And so, working with my co-founders and meeting them really came by way of talking too much.
Excellent. No, thank you for sharing the story. It's like follow every lead is what I take. It's like I share that all the time. People are like, oh, should I go? Should I not go? I was like, yes is the answer. Like, you should. Oh wait, you never know. It's like I went to this thing and somebody introduced me, and you can't make those things up. So for sure. But wanted to thank you for your time and share with the audience a little bit more. What's next for Black Pearl Global Investments?
Oh, what's next? Well, a few things are next. So we have been actively investing in the Caribbean and in Africa. So for us, what's next is really starting to, get boots on the ground, work with those startups in those territories. That's going to be a lot of fun. I think the rollout in Africa is going to look very unique. We're going to be able to partner with so a lot of large universities and a lot of banks in order to create funding systems specifically for early stage companies, which a lot of the investment activity going on the continent is much later stage. And so that's coming. And then Black Pearl is, moving closer to some fintech ventures. So we're always thinking about healthcare in two ways. Of course, there's the pure care, but then there's how to pay for it. How do we finance it? How do we get better technology into areas that can't afford it? How do we enable people to afford the bills? So we keep inching closer and closer and closer to the fintech side of things. We're dabbling with a few different investment and funding models that will expand access to investing, and that will, I think, kind of make a splash as kind of the first time that funds have been raised specifically for healthcare companies. So I would say keep an eye out for this cross between healthcare and fintech. I don't know, we'll call it FinCare or something. I don't know, but it'll be a really interesting blend of the two fields.
Excellent. Excited to see. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. For those that tuned in, Dr. Shante Williams, who is the CEO and founding partner of Black Pearl Investments. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. And for those that are tuning in, please tune in next week to hear more amazing founders in the space. So thanks again for joining us, Shante.
Thank you for having me.